Welcome to this episode of One Puff Media. Thanks for joining us this week. Today's guest is Shahar Yamay with Hefestus USA. Welcome, sir. How are you? Great to see you again.
Great to see you. How are you, Alex? I'm great today.
Doing well, doing well. Thanks for joining us. And why don't we start by kind of just introducing yourself, your company, and how you got started in the cannabis space?
CEO of Hefestus USA, which is a distribution company for Hefestus Tech, Hefestus Technologies. I actually got into cannabis industry like six years ago, but I think the journey started a lot before when my father ran a family business, and my father was asked to create a pre-roll machine since 2013 and for an Israeli producer. And then 2015, we had this first ever, I think, fully automated pre-roll machine. And when I joined the company, we started distributing it to North America and created this distribution entity, Hefestus USA in Nevada, for everything, for the local market's needs, with stock and everything. And here we are more or less today.
That's awesome. What a journey it must be, especially from your experience starting in Tel Aviv and then really breaking into the U.S. cannabis market. The technology that you guys produce, has it always been geared towards cannabis, or was there a previous use case in a different industry for you guys?
Yeah, the company is operating since 1993, but my father has done multiple equipments for a lot of industries like food, pharma. And so initially we were a food packaging and automation company. And only when cannabis started to be a thing in Israel, we started working on the needs from the Israeli operators.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And that seems like a pretty straightforward pivot as well, right? Very apples to apples comparison to the food and pharma space, and then your tech being compatible and leveraged in the cannabis space. I know that Israel has been doing a lot of research for a number of years on cannabis and industrial hemp specifically. What is the industry like in Israel right now? As far as, is there a legal cannabis market, or is it mainly industrial hemp and CBD?
It's pharmaceutical and CBD is not allowed. So,
interesting.
Yeah. And so there is always a contrast when you think of Israel as the technology empire in cannabis that we are or used to be, comparing with the actual status of what's going on with cannabis in the market is very contrast, I would say.
Really?
Yeah,
That's wild.
because we only have like 100,000 plus licenses, so that's the industry.
Okay, but so no CBD. That, I think that part's interesting. Is it just that necessarily the CBD products themselves, or is it actually the plant that can't be grown in Israel?
The plant can be grown, but it's not legal to sell a CBD product.
Interesting. I know that that's a big controversial topic here in the U.S., so I guess it kind of makes sense that you're seeing some similarities over there as well. It seems like you guys have a better hold on it, just because of here in the U.S. with the, I guess, underage consumption, how it's not FDA approved, and some of the products being pushed out can be obtained pretty much anywhere. So I can definitely see that as a way to do it in Israel. Was it a big culture shock when you shifted from doing work in Israel to the U.S. cannabis space?
I think the main shock was more on the technical side of things, because the cannabis was different. When we initially, even before me slightly, we got into Canada, we got into very sticky material, and the grind was different. I think in the first days of the distribution, that's what happened. Like, we actually learned, we got so much more experience. We got to understand what's the necessary adjustments. So yeah, it was a shock. I don't think it's a cultural shock. I think it's more of a material shock.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I remember early on when I first got into the legal cannabis space here in the U.S., and I started working for a couple companies that weren't too familiar with cannabis as a product here in the U.S. And so there's obviously a learning curve with that. And the mindset at the time was, we're going to come up with a way that's more efficient to clean resin and the residue and all of that sticky components that you deal with. And if there was a product that could clean resin as well as isopropyl alcohol, it would probably be the #1 selling product. So I can definitely see that being a learning curve. So did you have to tweak your technology and tweak your machines to account for how different the raw materials are?
Yeah, we've had, I mean, We see it more as an evolution than a revolution because we just improved because the base was good, technology was good. But obviously, if back then we were able, in the beginning, we were able to use mainly powdery stuff or stuff that is super homogenized. Today we can do very big kind particles with infused materials and even sprayed infused. So what we can do today is just unparalleled to what was back then in a little bit before COVID, I would say. And the market right now is stickier because of the infusions. So everything needs to be clean.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's doable.
So with your equipment, being that you have a USA essentially branch, do you manufacture your equipment here or is it imported?
It's imported from Israel, but everything is manufactured in our facility in Israel. Our techs over there do the checks and the QC on the stock that they have before it goes to the client. 'Cause we look at ourselves as obviously an automation company, but we're cannabis first company. We understand cannabis, we understand the papers, we understand what's the processes that needs to be done. So we are asking all those questions beforehand by the American team just to make sure that we got all the information, all the length, everything, and then that's why it's done there in the States.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Is this and I do you stay local in the US or do you travel a bit? Do you bounce back and forth? What's your main hub?
My main hub is Tel Aviv, 100%. Our facility is like 60 minutes up north from Tel Aviv, which is mainly production. But I travel a lot to the States. To Vegas now, the East is like, I get to the East a lot. And we actually are traveling to Nikken and to St. Louis, to MJ Unpacked. So yeah, I'm just traveling a lot. Now I'm in Thailand, so now it's
Well,
easier.
I'm sure your weather's fantastic as we start shifting towards that fall season. It seems like a great place. So, man, if you're going to be in Nikan and MJ Pack, that means, and are you talking Nikan Atlantic City?
Atlantic City, yeah.
Oh, so you're going to do a little tour. You're going to be up in Atlantic City, then you're going to pop over to, because I think that's like just a few days afterwards.
It's yeah,
A
it's a
little
small
overlap.
today. I think there's an overlap. I hope I get to St. Louis for Nick and New Jersey. I'm gonna be for sure, but we are going to present in both.
Nice, nice. So
Yeah,
we'll definitely run into each other at New Jersey then. It'll be a great time.
amazing.
Yeah, I've been there a couple the event the last 2 years. It's been fantastic and it's really been nice to see Nikan grow and the different companies and that's why I love those events and all of them really the innovation you see, the people you meet, the whole community that you can just see advancing as a community is phenomenal. I absolutely love it.
I agree, 100%. We all get better all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So being a CEO, living in Tel Aviv, exporting from Israel, bringing your equipment, which everything I've seen looks incredible, very modernized, very efficient. How does it work with you guys being an overseas manufacturing company whenever there's a technical issue? Do you guys deploy technicians? Do you guys pretty much train the people on how to properly clean and troubleshoot the machines?
First of course, we're training. We have the local team. Most of them are in Vegas, and we have the stock and everything in our warehouses in Vegas. And so the local team, when we get an order for say, and I'll go through briefly. When we get an order, we're going to assign a tech to the client, and the tech's going to ask all the questions. So the local tech is asking the questions, you get all the information for the sample for the machine, and then for QC and everything, and everything just align. Now the same tech that called the client is going to meet him for 5 days, and we're gonna teach him everything that seems to be taught about the machine. They're gonna know how to run it in less than 5 days. 3 days, they're up and running. Obviously, there is a learning curve, like everything, but that's the process that we're doing. So we
That's
really are
great.
manufacturing in Tel Aviv, and then the rest is done in the States.
Now I got the full picture. Manufacturing over in Tel Aviv, shipping to the US, storing and warehousing in Vegas, where that's your main US hub, and then able to provide the machines from there and also the technicians. I mean, it seems like a great operation for sure. Given that you're the CEO of this segment here in the US, and what did you see, I guess, was the directional shift into the cannabis space from your more traditional food and pharma? Was it you kind of driving there's a lot of ROI here if we shift into the cannabis space, or was it kind of like a collective decision?
First of all, we've seen the margins, obviously, like everything, but that was the beginning. Right now, if you remember, when we started working on this project, there was a hype and everything was going towards cannabis. And we had a solution, so we just went there.
Makes sense.
So I think that's where it went. And when technology was right and we were pushing the right way, we're igniting the process. I think for me, as someone who came from the high tech, and then my father had this cool thing that needed to be sold. So that's where I jumped in and say, cool industry, we have something, let's do it. And I can tell you that most of my father's toys is cool. Like he's got some cool machines for all kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. How different for you is the cannabis industry compared to the mobile tech and that ad tech, in the roles that you've held before?
Unparalleled. I really love the industry. I love the people. I love the fact that we're touching plants. I love the fact that we're actually producing something. It's fun. Cannabis industry is fun. We all of us like to bitch about it sometimes, but it's fun.
I think everyone in the industry at some point is bitching about the industry, right? Because there's so much red tape. There's so many issues that you have to deal with to get a license, especially on the operational side, and then not to mention just the market compression, product compression throughout the industry. And so I can see that for sure. But it makes sense. It makes sense that there's some correlates, but that there are no parallels, because it's such a unique industry and how it grows and how it shifts. And I can, with pre-rolls being essentially the number one seller of cannabis products throughout many markets, and I can definitely see a value add for having the most premium pre-roll machines that you can get, right? Especially for efficiency, cost reduction, and so many reasons. When you guys produce these machines, do you guys lease them? Do you sell them? Is it kind of like you rent it temporarily kind of thing? How does that work?
We got some options, but originally we sold those machines directly, and we have some partners that we work with for leasing the equipment. And for specific shows, we offer all kind of specific terms, but generally it's really flexible. And that's a solution. We need to just prove you the technology is right, and then the solution or how to pay on it will get there.
Yeah. The industry, as you know, the cannabis industry, it moves like lightning. Was there similarities that you've seen in the tech space that had this kind of growth rate, this kind of excitement around it? Or is this an unparalleled space as well?
No, I think the changes, sometimes in mobile you can see the numbers flying, but I wasn't an expert by then. Okay, I know the industry, but I was an expert. But in cannabis, it just changed. Like regulation, products, markets, states, new states is just are popping, moving from the black gray market into a regulated market. There's so many change coming, and that's without even talking about product. I mean, now blunts are the thing, infusions. Okay,
Now, yeah, it is crazy. And there's so many different consumer products popping up on a daily, different new types, different new market strategies to sell your bioproduct or your consumables, your edibles, whatever it might be. Do you see that, or let me ask actually a different question first. Do your machines produce blunts as well, infused products, or does it only produce uninfused pre-rolls?
there are limitations, but we can use with our machine. You can use infused material, blade infused, bubble ash, all kind of infusion. If it's not mud, it's gonna run, and obviously consistency of the grind is important. But this is more of the implementation. The technology can run infused material because the way we close the joint, because we fold and we do not twist, we have the capability just to push the top of the blunt if you want to leave it open. But if you think about it, if you want to close the blunt, it's only folding, it's not twisting. So yeah, our machine can do blunts. I think it's the only machine that can do blunts, can stuff blunts right now
That's
because of
awesome.
the way we fold. Yeah.
And your machine takes the pre-rolled cone styles, right? And then packs it, then closes it, all automated, and then spits out your joint.
Yep.
Phenomenal. I wish I had one of those. It'd be a lot easier, save some time, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So that it is a multifaceted for sure. So I guess what's the biggest problem you guys are solving with your machines?
I think if the business is an ROI, let's put versatility aside. But if the business is an ROI, then you have two ways of looking at ROI: the money you save, or the opportunities that you can gain. So we're optimizing the process. So we're saving a lot of money on the process. Also for logistics, because we can do route over 109, we can just cut it in the middle and make the dog walk.
That's awesome.
On the save, and that's where we solve one problem. And then on the optional opportunities, let's say you're running usually 70K a month, but then you get an order for 60 or 70K additional pre-rolls. Then if you're not automated, how would you be able to achieve it? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
that's the other way to look at the problems that we solve.
Yeah, and it makes sense because I saw that your Aurora 2000 system produces 2,000 cones an hour, right? I mean that's no joke. I mean that's a lot, man. That's a lot.
That's the Aura 2000 was the last generation. With the Aura X produces the same numbers. That's the top production, but yeah, 1500 for sure for most sizes.
That's phenomenal.
It's a lot of joint.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And you know, you talk about the problem you're solving. If you had to have a staff sitting there rolling 2,000 joints, you'd have to have a lot of people to complete that in an hour. I mean, and then you'd have to be concerned about the consistency of the product that's being presented to consumers. And I got to be honest, there's nothing worse than obtaining a pre-roll that doesn't smoke well, especially if that is the main intent of it, right? And I don't know how many times I've gone to a dispensary throughout the country. Every different dispensary, I'm always going to buy at least one pre-roll. And I've toured dozens of grows throughout the country, dozens. And I've been to dozens and dozens of dispensaries throughout the country in every state. And it never fails that I'll buy a pre-roll and it doesn't smoke well, right? It's too tight, it's too loose, whatever the problem might be, it is all related to how it was packed or how it was produced. It's never, well, this flower doesn't smoke, right? It's always it's too tight or something like that. And so now I'm actually curious if I've ever, I'm sure I have consumed something that was produced by one of your machines. I'm sure of it.
I can throw names. I can name drop, but I don't think that's the essence of it.
No, not necessary, but just between all of the places that I've been and obtained them, and I'm sure you have some operational in Vegas in some capacity. So I'm sure somebody's got one rolling out there or in one of the many other markets. So
Yeah.
um,
No, I'm
I
sure
would
you have. It's like lately we've been working with also the bigger bunches and in the industry, so biggest companies. So I think like the brands are coming out. I think the technology behind it is exactly what you're trying to achieve. Because we do not press hard. We're gonna use weights and slightly drop those rods on the pre-roll, so you get the perfect job.
That's awesome. Now, did you guys have, and I'm trying to think, I was at an after party. This wasn't last year at MJ BizCon. It was maybe 2 or 3 years ago at MJ BizCon, but there was an after party one of the days that was actually held in a facility that sold and distributed the some type of pre-roll machines. And when you came in, and I remember because at the time, I forget what company I was with, but at the time, I don't know if it was you guys. The company that was doing it had limos that were going back and forth and dropping people off. And there was a massive pre-roll automation machine right in when you walked in, great food and drinks, and everyone's going around and seeing the system. Was that you guys? Was that your guys' party?
It was Green Bros.
No?
No, it was Green Bros.
Oh, it was Gimbals. Ah, okay. So you
Green Bros.
okay, yeah. That was a cool party, but that was the first time that I'd been in a facility that was showing off, producing or distributing the actual machines. Obviously, you see them on show floors at different events and things like that, but
Yeah, no, it was a cool event. I remember it. It was a cool event. Yeah, and a cool
so
facility also.
yeah, for sure. Maybe that's the future of yours, right? Hold it in your warehouse and throw the biggest after party bash known to man. Yeah, that was the only party that I've been to at every MJ BizCon where we had the option for a limo. And the guy that I was with was super bummed too because he left his bag from the show that day with all of his business cards in the limo after we left. So he was bummed. I remember that night very well for that reason. You got to hold on to that like gold, baby.
You should.
For sure. So when you're dealing with your customers, obviously your customer is probably within a certain tier of grower, right? Or manufacturer. What is that kind of like aha moment for you when you're discussing or pitching to your customer where they realize, wow, this is really the level of automation I need?
I think most of the pitchings are for, we mostly are explaining or trying to understand if this is the right stage to put automation in before we even pitch our machine. You get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
when you're at 30, 50, 60K a month and you have the option to grow, then you need to start talking about automation. And then, like signature thing is the way that we fold the joints and compared to the rest because of the ultimate lightning of a joint that is fold and the air is going with where it needs to go. So that's like where we mostly focus our priority in technology of the pre-rolls. But I think like we really keep it simple. We do not over automate. We do not implement things that's not needed. So I gave you the pitch and like uh, slightly pitched you, but that's our technology.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense though. If so, it's really the fold and that proprietary component that's the aha moment for the customers when they see, okay. But for you going in and pitching it, it really has to be an evaluation if they're ready for that level of automation. And that makes sense, right? No point in spending more time on a pitch if they're not the prospect that you need. So that does
No,
make
I
sense.
don't think it's about that. By the way, we tried like it's a process. We get so many clients and people that we met along the way because they grew to a certain point or because they moved, on how the industry is. So we're all around with explaining the technology. But you know what? If you want like a specific thing, is like we cut the paper. We can just put in a 109 and then we cut the paper to any size that you want. So that's a great value for the client.
And
You
that
can have
happens
one
in your
machine.
system.
Yeah, it's a standard thing. So,
That's awesome. That's great.
and we learned it. It's not like clients taught that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that just
That's what we
shows
need.
yeah, that just shows that you're listening to the customer and designing it around them. I'm trying to conceptualize this. How big is this automation machine? Is it like a size of a refrigerator? Is it
Yeah, it's a smaller refrigerator, but a real small one. It's like 120. I'm talking centimeters. I apologize. 120 on 120 on 160.
okay?
I don't want to be, I can check it out. But anyway, it's small.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, yeah, I've seen some. I've been in a lot of the facilities I've been in. I've seen massive ones, and I thought to myself, well, that just is a destination for failure. So I think keep it simple, right?
Yeah, and also keep it small. All of our machines in the rest of the industries are smaller than the competitors.
Well, yeah, because I've never seen one as small as you're describing that can produce that level of output. And most of the time, I don't want to say it's an overkill because I don't own my own facility. I don't know what their use case is, but I've seen some that are bigger than vending machines. They're taller than me. They got to be,
Yeah, yeah.
at least 4 feet wide by 4 feet wide, these massive cubes with glass that you can see through it. And as I'm looking at the complexities of it, and obviously they're able to put the output that the customer requires, but it seems like an overkill. It seems like very large, and especially where, space is critical in your grow, having a smaller one makes sense. I mean, I'm sure some of those other machines that I've seen in the past have been imported to some extent. And I'd imagine,
In,
keeping it a little smaller definitely helps in that regard as well.
in some states, also the tax that you're paying on the operational area is so much higher than what you're paying for the grow area. So that's also a point, and people try to keep it small, the operational part.
What is the cost comparatively? Are you guys on par with other pre-roll automation machines, or are you
Yeah, we
less?
are. We are usually a little on like we're somewhere in less than the middle, I would say, almost $250,000,
Okay.
roughly, depending on the set, on the tooling and everything. We are not. I think like also when you sell a machine and you just need to tell everyone everything up front and not just the shipping is X, the installation is Y. Like with us, everything is included in the price.
Well, that's great. So once you come on with you, there's no hidden fees. There's no, hey, you're going to get hit with $500 shipping costs after the fact. It's just you order, you delivered, you're up and running. We'll get your techs in there and we'll help you teach what you need to know. We'll get you all set up. And then you're off to the races. What do most companies see for the length of time on ROI? I guess it, $200 K seems on par with everything that I've seen for pre-roll automation machines, especially ones with your output capabilities. What is that like? Depending on their output, you can see a return within inside of a year, kind of thing.
Here it is. And here it is because if you're calculating the cost of labor that you're going to be saving or going to be funneling to different chores, which that's what we're seeing usually. Because a business is not only the automation. The business is the team, the product, and the right equipment or processes. Process and equipment is the same for me. And so it really depends on the ROI depends on where the outputs are and what are the rates in the States. If
Yeah.
it's if a pre-roll is $15 and
Very quick and
do the
easy.
math.
Yeah, yeah, because that's what I was doing. I was like, man, if you can produce 2,000 average state, 10,000 a pre-roll, you're getting 20,000 a run on the machine in your return. That's quick, So I could imagine making it back. I could see if you were selling into the Michigan market, might be a tougher process to make it back when you have pre-rolls that are $1 in that state. So I can see that as
But
being
then you're calculating, you're also calculating the use of labor. It's very hard to predict. You really need all the numbers to be on the table to say how long, but here is usually easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. A year easy. Obviously, we know what sets your machines apart. And you mentioned something earlier about depending on the grind, how it's grinded up will affect, how it's produced. And that makes total sense. Do you guys recommend different grinding or mills to be used with your machine? Or is there a certain kind of, hey, it needs to be fine, this fine in order to be most efficient?
There's kind of two answers to it. First of all, we can work with any grinder or milling machine, but we recommend ours. First of all, because we made it, and second, because it's really good. So I think that's your answer for it. But really, today we can really work with any kind of grind. It's just the consistency of the product is gonna be better if you have a consistent grinder. We're not the only one producing good grinders in the market, but yeah, I think sometimes when you're buying an equipment of $250,000 and then you're not buying the right grinder for it, sometimes it doesn't make sense. But I can understand people that start with a cheaper or more simple grinder. And so, yeah, I do think that a good grinder is a better fit for automation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have like a package deal with your grinders that you guys provide?
Yeah, I think we're going to have something very, very appealing in the next shows in St. Louis and Nican. We will reveal prices, I think, on spot, but that's going to be something worth checking out, I think.
Well, I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see it. So grinders make sense. You produce them, you send it out. Is there a type of packaging that you guys recommend for the pre-rolls afterwards to ensure the integrity of the product?
We are coming out with something new very soon, and that will fully automate the process or 80% of the processes. And not yet to be revealed, but it's gonna be, I think, an ROI that is very close to what you get on an Aura, on an Aura X. The market has just a few. At the end of the day, it's either packs or tubes. So we are on the way of automating the rest of the process.
That's awesome. In the future, it'll be just insert packaging, insert cones, insert flour, spit it out, it's done. Is that kind of the intent in the future?
Yeah. The near future in NJBizCon. Yeah.
I love that. I can't wait to see you guys in Vegas. Great time. It's going to be fantastic. So you have a booth both at MJ and Nican and St. Louis, or you just walk in the shows on those ones?
No, we're gonna have a booth in each and every one of them. Trying to get to Ohio as well.
It's a good play. I think Ohio, especially with their soon to be, just rollout of pre-rolls everywhere. I think it's a phenomenal market. Let me know if you're interested. I might have told you this before, but I'll shoot an introductory over to Lenny. Phenomenal guy. And he's always looking to have more equipment manufacturers on the floor in the show with equipment there. Just it's part of the appeal for a lot of the licensed operators. So let me know. I'll give you an intro to Lenny. He's a great guy.
I would love that. And
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Sure. So given that you have everything going on, and having lived and worked in both Israel and US, how would you compare and we talked about this briefly, the cannabis industry in the future of the US and Israel. Do you see a shift happening in like Tel Aviv where it's going to be more commercialized and consumerized
Yeah,
versus
yeah,
medical?
yeah, yeah, and 100%. I think like in Tel Aviv, in Israel, we made a mistake. I'm not sure who did it and why they did it, but they let cannabis in and yet to let cannabis out. And so we're getting some Canadian or a US, not yet US, but Canadian cannabis in. And I'm not an expert to the Israeli cannabis, but I know because I'm part of the industry. And we're not exporting enough. And we all also hurt our growers because it's a small country and you bring uh, cannabis in. And comparing to the States where, you know what? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the States. I mean, it's going to be legalized eventually, but
Yeah, when will be the question, you
when,
know?
Alex, when do you think? Give it to us.
I personally think that we're going to see it inside of 5 years. And I know that's most people would say, no way, no way. But the reality is there's a huge deficit in the US. We don't export many products at all outside of the US to other countries. And I can't see people sitting at the top thinking, hey, we're going to play catch up in 10 years because right now these other countries are already exporting to one another. There's already cannabis that's allowed to be going from one country to the next country to the next country. And quite frankly, if we look at California as a massive wine producer and exporter of the country, that same thing should be true for cannabis. Obviously, cannabis can grow anywhere around the world, but I think that most people see California and the West Coast of the US as the cannabis mecca, the stable grounds to which the industry is built upon. And it makes sense that somebody at the top is going to open their eyes and say, wow, we can start exporting a ridiculous amount of cannabis. And it could help all of our local businesses, especially when you think about Michigan and California and Colorado and all these states that have just distillate stockpiled. I think that's where we're going to see the opportunity for main exports will be on the oil, similar to barrels of oils being shipped around the country and around the world coming from other countries. I think it's going to be very similar where cannabis crude oil is going to be exported out of the US for other countries to produce their own edibles and to produce and manufacture their own consumables. And I think that we'll start to see that shift in about 5 years. And I think that with inside of 10 years, it'll be a real viable business for the US and an exportable product.
When do you think the federalization is gonna happen?
It's got to happen before, right?
It's, if it wouldn't, it's gonna.
It's gotta, because I just think about the global market and I think about still the misinformation about cannabis is by far the biggest hindrance of our progress, dating back, to Reefer Madness and in just the overall black label and people using cannabis like in closet users, and you see it more and more prevalent, soccer moms wanting to get gummies, and you see a lot of that. And so because smoking itself isn't as mainstream as it was back in the 70s and the 80s and everyone's smoking cigarettes and all this stuff, I think that's why I believe the distillate will be the crude oil will be the winner that sets out for the exports, because we're already seeing that shift of acceptance because of drinks, because of gummies, because of ingredients that you can add to things. I mean, a huge fan of THC chocolate syrup and things like that. Why not spice up your life with a little THC ice cream, or chocolate milk? So I think you're going to start seeing those things, and it's going to be that balancing act of how to promote this as an actual product that has both medical use cases and recreational use cases without impacting child use and underage use of it. And that's going to be forever. But I think as we get to a point of stabilization and mass acceptance, which I think you're already starting to see, we're going to have just that much more progress, that much faster. And I think it's just going to be beneficial to everyone, not just the US, but everyone. I mean, you're seeing kind of the scale back happening where you are right now, right? Where cannabis used to be a little bit more than what it is now as far as the actual industry, and now that's going the opposite direction. So I think it's, why do you think that is, by the way? Yeah, so you think it was just a political thing at the top, they went too soon, scaled back kind of thing? For sure, for sure. Yeah, Yeah, no, I think what you said is spot on. I think that how Thailand rolled it out initially, it was premature and it wasn't thoroughly thought through. And so because of that, there was a lot left on the table, both from a taxation process, but also accessibility. I think the whole thing was just a little sloppy. And I see the exact same thing with the CBD beverage market right now and the similarities with the rollback in Texas and some of the states that are really trying to grab what they can and not relinquish too much because they went too fast, too quick, running off of the 2018 Farm Bill without any real oversight. And everything kind of fell into this bucket. And so the next thing you know, you had 10,000 CBD drink manufacturing companies or like alcohol and beverage manufacturers that were able to pivot and start doing this, but without that rigorous regulation or testing component that's predominantly required in the actual cannabis market. So I think very similarly with what you're seeing in Thailand and in the other states kind of repeal back. I think that that makes a lot of sense, right? We're in the wild wild west. Everyone's trying to go as fast as they can. You can see it from the first state that moved forward into basically saying, you know, screw you, federal government. We're going to do this as a state without you. And then they started implementing these rules that made sense for their states, for their markets, for their consumers, but without any real oversight. It became the wild, wild west unintentionally with Colorado, with all these states coming on and saying, well, we're just going to do our own thing. You know, feds don't want to come in. We're just going to make our own rules. And I think that it obviously was critical for the industry because I think California kind of jumping on and Colorado basically in the very early days saying, hey, we don't really care what the federal government says. This is what we're going to do because this is what our people want to do. I think that was a critical stage for the entire global cannabis market to see, oh shit, this is really viable. There's real money, there's real people. So I think that it was critical, but it's also part of our demise right now and part of our biggest issue with being able to scale. And even if we were to come up with a way to allow US exports of cannabis and cannabis products, it wouldn't resolve the issue of interstate commerce. And because of these individual states that are fragmented and there's no unification between requirements and standards, it's going to make any level of interstate commerce here very difficult for a number of reasons. But I think that all goes to back what you were saying. It's just everyone started moving really fast. Nothing was really thought through. And you still see it in states like Maryland, where now come this fall, you're going to, well, shit, I guess we're only a month or two away, where you'll be able to go in and grab a social equity license that was issued out to somebody that they won, that they bought, and now they had no way to actually get the business off the ground, right? Too short-sighted. And I understand what they attempted to do, but it was just done in improper way. And now you have all these licenses that don't have a home, that haven't opened businesses, that really unfortunate to the people who could have produced that. When we go to launch the High Index International next year, and hopefully that's at Mary Jane in Berlin, we're going to have to shift, and our whole model and design is having to shift basically away from this very capitalistic US market to how can we align our software and our data to these individual countries, right? And how their markets are operational and how they're leveraging different things. So let me ask you something. If federal legalization happened tomorrow, what would that mean for you guys and your customers? Like, what would that mean for Hefestus USA? There's a lot. You're not off. I think it's about 40,000 active cannabis licenses in the US right now, give or take a hundred or two. And then how many are no, yeah, oh, it always. You know, there was so much buzz when basically Trump, and I don't know if you actually saw it, but I was watching and I was so intently just listening to how he was speaking, how he looked at the people to his left when he was like, "Oh yeah, maybe a couple weeks." And that woman was nodding there when he was making that first statement. I think that if it were to happen, if cannabis was rescheduled like that it's being talked about in the federal government, I think it's going to create another cannabis boom within the industry. So, you know, right now money's tight, investors are tight, there's weariness about individual markets, you got increased taxes on the West Coast, a bunch of, you know, dispensaries, especially like large MSOs that are closing up some operations to reallocate their funds and assets to shift for more revenue. So I see all those things as the moment it really hits pen to paper with the rescheduling, I think we're going to see kind of like another craze. I think you're going to see a different level of money coming into the industry, a bunch of new people coming into the industry and new companies coming in because there's that fear that's been lifted. And it doesn't, and for me personally, I'm not a political person, so I don't think it matters what side of the aisle it's on, who decides to, make the shift forward. Whenever it happens, the level of buzz that's just going to be created is going to bring a bunch more money and tech into it, I think. Yeah, I can't wait. And many people look at US in some aspects, as being, the leader in certain exports and certain imports and certain level of consumerism and especially the capitalistic society of it. So I think that we're sitting on the stage and everyone's on their own stage and they're looking back at us and they're kind of waiting. Like they have their own things going on. But when I think about Germany, and even more so, I think about Israel specifically, and I think about the Sun Belt, right? And I think about how much things and growth can be like actual plants and agriculture that can be produced across the Sun Belt and all around the globe. I think that will be the kind of shift in structure that needs to happen. And when you mention, hey, we got 25,000 producers, but in every other industry, there's not 25,000 agricultural producers of a single product. That's just not realistic, especially when you're talking about exporting and this and that. I think that the biggest thing that will happen after a legalization shift or change will be the shift of where the actual cannabis is produced. And I think that's going to be an important thing because if everywhere in the US is able to grow cannabis legally under certain confines of regulations for their state and in their counties, and it's exportable or interstate commerce is opened up, there won't really be a need for that much cannabis to be produced in Oklahoma and Illinois and Utah and Michigan and New York. Like, I don't think that will be necessary if massive, yeah, definitely won't. It won't, right? Like the amount of money you have to pay to get an indoor cultivation facility up and running. Well, that's just bananas. If I can do it in an already environment where I don't have to worry about snow or humidity or these changes in environment that really impact how much you're able to produce. There's a company, I believe it's called Penny Cannabis. I don't know the exact details about this, but somewhere in Arizona. And I remember somebody zoomed in and showed me this on a map. There is a greenhouse somewhere in Arizona that used to produce the majority of like lettuce and broccoli throughout the US. This greenhouse is like 3 miles long, legitimately 3 miles of glass ceiling that used to produce like a lot of stuff. And it's just sunny there year round, right? And it's perfect weather year round. So to have a greenhouse with a glass roof to grow all your products and be able to maintain its environment without the use of electricity, without the use of lights is critical. And Penny Cannabis, I'm pretty sure it's Penny Cannabis, bought like a portion of that building, a portion of that greenhouse. So they have like a mile of, it's legit. I'm pretty sure and you can see it from satellite images from space. And they bought a portion of it. And so their output soon will be absurd. And when I think about this is crazy. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with meat too. Just like you were saying with like the agricultural space, it's like, meat producers and manufacturers and farms in the country where there used to be thousands and thousands and thousands of cattle and whatever it might be in any kind of meat processor in the US. Now there's just a couple hundred. And the big ones, there's only a few throughout the country. And, I think about like Tyson's chicken nuggets or whatever as a perfect example. It's not like the bag you're buying in New York was produced in New York, that's just not how it works. And so I think that's going to be the standard as it kind of shifts. Yeah, for sure. Ianthus is going to buy this grow here and they're going to buy that grow there. But once interstate commerce comes up, they're going to shut down one of those and centralize and have one main distribution hub. And it makes sense from a logistical business operational standpoint. It's the most logical way you can go. And it's going to be really unfortunate for a lot of the little guys, but I think there'll be room for that boutique market to still thrive. And I think it'll be critical for consumers. It'll just be on a different level. For you, listen, I was so close in Virginia. I was so close, Shahir, in Virginia. I tried to open the country cannabis market and cafe. Now, this was 4 years ago, and I had a beautiful business model, and it was a conversion of a winery that we have here in Northern Virginia, and it was perfect. So the idea was we were going to grow plants for people to see and learn about it, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can actually come in and interact with the plant and learn about it. But at the same time, it's a farm to table breakfast and lunch spot that closes down in the evenings and has private venues and food trucks that come in. It was magical. And I found the absolute perfect location for it. And then when Youngkin was elected in 2021, the legalization shifted. And it kind of, we scaled back to moving to that adult use component. And so even though I can do it now under the existing laws and still make it work under a private club, if you will, it didn't have that same rapport. But the idea was to repurpose all the land, grow all the fruits and vegetables and all the produce you wanted for your restaurant, have it there, and then have a community give back component where you're giving all that fruit and those vegetables and all your produce, all the extra to local communities, schools, homeless shelters, everything, right? And I love that aspect because they're when I think about Amsterdam and how long they've been operational in consumption lounges, and then you see like the first consumption lounge in Vegas already closed down. I think it's just another thing that we were talking about earlier. People they just choose to do things a way that they want to without actually looking at the evidence of what's been successful. And Vegas is a tough spot to throw a consumption lounge into when everyone's smoking cannabis anywhere. You can't walk a block in Vegas without smelling weed. So it's tough to say, oh, well, people are going to just migrate inside. The mentality is already shifted. So what's the biggest leadership challenge stepping into the CEO role of Hefestus USA? What's the biggest challenge that you've faced in that leadership role? So with that, especially the remote side of it, I totally get it. How do you approach building and motivating a team in a fast changing industry? Yeah, I absolutely love that answer, by the way, because to me, it's one of the most paramount things that you can do for your company as starting out is ensuring that you have people who are not only just familiar, who understand it, but who appreciate it, who are in it for the right reasons and see the value. So that makes a lot of sense for sure. With that, what piece of advice would you give to a new cannabis entrepreneur coming into the game? What would that be? Yeah, I like that. And that makes sense, right? You have to be forward facing. You have to think through everything before you just jump into it. Although sometimes you got to jump, but being prepared for sure. Yeah, be proactive, get out there, learn as much, right? That's my mentality. So as we wrap up, Shahar, what's next for Hefestus USA? And any exciting launches or partnerships on the horizon? That's awesome. I can't wait to hear and see, firsthand how you guys are growing over the next couple of years, how you guys pivot and change with the industry. I think it's awesome. And I guess as we wrap up and kind of close this down, where can people find you and where can people connect with Hefestus on USA and get connected to get your product? As we wrap this up, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you could give? And I know I kind of asked this previously with, giving advice to a new cannabis entrepreneur, but specifically when it comes to a company manufacturing equipment for the industry, what would you really recommend for that company, for that person who's getting into maybe the competitive pre-roll space or into any kind of equipment? What is the big thing you would say about that? Yeah, that makes sense. You got to level it up, with your proprietary fold. Makes sense. Yeah, it's the best thing for sure. Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I've learned a bunch about a bunch of different markets, and I know our listeners will as well. And I can't thank you enough for being on. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're going to see each other in just a few weeks in New Jersey. Thank you. And for all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in as well. And we look forward to seeing you again next week as we spotlight more innovators and more technology pushing the plant forward. Until then, thank you for rolling with us.